Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Industrial Insights podcast. I have Gabriel Rodrigues with Falconi with me here today, and he works in a consulting practice where they work on operations and logistics and work with a lot of the same companies that we work with, helping them figure out how to optimize their operations, sometimes save money and turn around their organizations, and oftentimes also work with private equity that also usually has a big hand in finance and operations for big companies around the world. So, Gabriel, thanks for being here today. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you very much, Justin. It's a pleasure to be joining you in this conversation. I'm sure I'm going to be learning a lot here today and hope I can share some interesting insights to you and your audience so we can make operations more efficient and competitive.
Yeah. You're the first person I've talked with that grew up in Brazil. That's different than Chicago. What's the difference?
Wow. No, huge difference. If I can start with the weather, that would be the easiest
Yes.
one, right? No, it's Chicago is amazing. I'm originally from Brazil, as you mentioned. Brazil is, I think there are several similarities between Brazil and the US, but several differences, huge differences, especially when you think about the infrastructure, when you think about the regulations around operations, and even around labor, around taxes. I think there are some huge differences that
Less infrastructure, less regulation, less taxes.
I wouldn't say less, I would say different. I would say very different from what we have here. Which make very complex environment to operate in Brazil from that standpoint. But if I translate that to the US, the challenges are a bit different. The challenges here are more related to integration and how you connect in a country with the size of the US, right? How we make efficient supply chains in this environment where we have when you look about around the population in the consumer market that the companies that we work with try to serve. In the US, you have a much more sad consumer market. You have a huge consumer market in the West Coast, a huge consumer market in the East Coast. Brazil, it's much more concentrated. So which poses different challenges related to how you organize your network, how you optimize your locations, how you optimize your cost than here. So it's different challenges, but
Way to bring it back to supply chain. I love it. Yeah.
yeah. So those differences I think are super interesting to learn, and you compare and contrast the two countries. But there are several things that we realize that we learned operating in Brazil for several decades that we could apply here, especially when it comes to efficiency, to the details of extracting the maximum value from the assets that you have, which I think from the context that we had in the US for the last couple of years with higher interest rates, high inflation, that became very important for organizations so they could maximize their return on investment.
Yes. That's universal in every country.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Falconi, you've been there for long enough now. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, I've been with the company for about 16 years, and I'm an industrial engineer. Since I graduated, just started with the company after a period of working with Unilever. Inside Falconi, been serving 85% of my time with the company. I've been serving manufacturing logistics operations, trying to drive efficiency from different segments. I mean, all the way from aviation,
Mhm.
passing through mining, steel, consumer goods, also pulp and paper, not only in Brazil, but also uh, Europe, Mexico, in the US, Canada. So it's been a fun journey so far. So I started with as a business analyst and working directly in the shop floor with some of the supervisors, managers, and became a partner of the company a couple of years ago. 8 years ago, I moved to the US as part of our ambition to establish a more structured operation here. And it's been an amazing journey so far.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then where might you be in the last year in terms of places where you are consulting and like locations that you go to?
So the main locations that I've been going to, Texas. I mean, in the US, within the US, most of the places where we're seeing a boom in industrial demand, like Texas. If you think about the whole Midwest as well, has been strengthening the manufacturing arm they have, but also a lot in Mexico, in Canada recently, and a lot in Europe, like the Netherlands, Germany. Those have been some countries we've been working with recently,
Yep.
um, with a special focus in manufacturing and logistics.
Okay. So not just the states. So even though you might be in Chicago and you're growing the U.S. like operations, you still have what I would guess is a lot of global companies. So
Yeah,
you they may you
a
may
lot.
support them here, but it leads to other
Yeah.
areas as part of their supply chain or part of their overall strategy.
Exactly, because a lot of these, especially the global companies, a lot of their as they are, we do a lot of work focus on implementation of strategies. So even though those strategies might be defined globally, sometimes they require local support to push the implementation of the strategy. So that's why also it drives a lot of our work around the globe.
Yeah. Give me an idea. Strategies. That's a big word. What's it
Yeah.
mean for a couple of companies? I'm sure you have like, here's the 5 main moves that people always need. And here's the good times moves, the bad times moves, the acquisition moves, and the disposition moves. Like, what are some of the main ones you're working on now that are top of mind?
So that is a great point, because especially when you think about operations, which is where we focus nowadays, a lot of these strategies, they revolve around a pretty common group of strategies. I think it's always around revisiting your footprint in your network design. It's around driving efficiencies within the walls of your operation. Is it around simplifying SKU portfolios, or simplifying structures, moving capabilities from central teams to local teams, or all the way around? So the strategies, they revolve always around, or working with different suppliers, right? They revolve around these elements, especially nowadays. What we have seen, the main priorities for companies that we have been helping to push and implement are around simplification of their portfolio of products, so they can
Yep.
make sure that they're working on the more profitable products, simplifying the value chain so they reduce their risk. Like, for example, as you go through your portfolio, how you make sure that we are removing from there the ones that are lower margin, high complexity to your operation,
Yeah.
but at the same time not affecting your ability to sell, because sometimes a lot of
Meet the market. Yeah.
the sale of one product is conditioned or connected to a sale of another product. So that is one of the big elements. But the main one that we have been working on is helping companies to drive operational excellence within the four walls of their operations. And the reason for that, in our perspective, is because with the challenges with labor market recently, the challenges with raw materials, higher prices of energies, companies started to, okay, what can I do to
Yeah.
offset that so I don't pass that price or their cost increase to my clients, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of labor productivity optimization, and not even to reduce the number of people that we have, but to how can I operate with this labor that I have available today, because the location that I'm where today, I cannot hire anymore, right?
Yes.
So you de-risk your operation with that,
Hmm.
but also how can I reduce raw material losses? How can I reduce quality losses? And even thinking about the fixed cost around that location, their operation, how can I optimize that so when I have this volatility in my demand,
Yeah.
I don't get so bitten by the fixed side of my cost structure. Right? So those has been the main strategy that we've been working with companies across the globe to push.
That's a lot of stuff. I would
Oh, it
imagine
is.
when you show up, you're the savior. They're like, wow, if you can do all of that, you've got yourself a job for life. That's like, these are big problems and they are ongoing challenges that people have to always be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the way that we like to operate is we kind of become, it's very difficult for anyone in any organization to push a strategy and at the same time be running the business, right? So
Yeah.
it's just like because we are trying to, it's literally, we are trying to change the wheel of your car, but the car is still running, right?
Yes.
So how you do
And
that?
it's not your car.
Yeah, right. So what we normally try to do is to come as an additional muscle that can help companies drive that strategy, that implementation,
Yeah.
at the same time that they keep the business running, while we help them build that new capability so we can go away and they can sustain the performance. So we start to become an integrated part of the company's team, our
Yeah.
client's team, for a while. And then we start to help them shift the product, the processes, shift the structure, train the team. And one that is more stable and they can run that by themselves, we start seeing the results moving. That's when our team pulled off and let them keep the show.
Yeah, that's so I would imagine it's funny. On one hand, I would think to zoom out a little bit and think through like when you first arrive, like what you need before you arrive in terms of like data and knowledge about their operations, their financials, versus strategies might be in the middle. And then on the other side is like some specific tactics when people think like tactical, like, no, that means this is in that palette, not in this palette. Like, I suppose let's zoom out before we zoom in. If you just think of like things you need when you're first getting engaged and how you're like introduced to clients or how they find you guys or how you guys get started. And then how you diagnose. You're a doctor of operations. So when you're in the doctor's office, you only see the doctor for one moment and they already have like an idea of what your symptoms are. They've already heard about your family history and then they come up and then they diagnose. So if we use that doctor analogy, help us just think through like how you guys get started on an assignment with people and like the things you need from them in order to get smart and get like acclimated and get grounded in what they have going on before you show up and you say, who's this Gabriel guy and what's he doing?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think we have a clear understanding that the best way to collaborate with any other client is to have clarity of what the issue is and which role we are going to play, which role they are going to play. So we invest some time to build that clarity together with them. And sometimes the client already shows up with an idea of what the problem is, what they're trying to solve for. But we also need to do a sanity check of that because sometimes that direction is not correct. Just as you described, just like a doctor, right?
Yeah.
Someone likes to self-prescribe, right? We need to do some sanity checks first.
Chat
What we
GPT told me to do it. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So what we normally do, there is a couple of days that we engage with a client, not under any type of contract, just under an NDA, so we can exchange information safely. That we would normally interview a few people to understand the different perspectives, what they are trying to accomplish, and also do some financial analysis, but also some process analysis, looking at some process metrics. Let's be more concrete for this. A recent discussion that we had, someone showed up to us and say, listen, guys, I'm looking for someone to help me with my productivity in my warehouse, right? So first thing that we start to do is, okay, let me know what is your productivity today? What type of operation do you have? Why do you think this is a problem? What's going on? So we had a few conversations. We visited one of the warehouses, look at the process, look at the operation, and we even look at what are the initiatives that you guys are already doing? Because probably there is someone doing something here, right?
Yeah.
So we look at this and then we say, okay, guys, I think there is a lot of things here that you guys have on the plate that seems to be targeting the right thing. For us to get to that conclusion, we would, after understanding their operation, we would compare with some benchmarks, we would compare with some internal references that we have. So we would provide them a full potential of,
That's the best part. That's where you're like, I know what other people are doing. Yeah, this
yeah,
is
right.
part of what I do.
Yeah. So we would come and say, okay, today you are at, I don't know, 200 pallets per hour. You could, for your type of operation, you could get probably to, I don't know, 350. But those are some of the elements that we would need to work on. And this is the elements that you guys are already working on. So you could either stick to what you are doing, get some improvement, and that is a good path. Or we could also come on board and help you guys go getting beyond this with some additional resources that we can bring and pull together for you. So that's when the engagement would actually start, with a clear target, a clear return on investment, so a common objective, so we become almost like a joint team to work towards that objective.
Yeah. It's funny. The more I learn about supply chain, the more it's such a broad topic that it's amazing to think that you can be knowledgeable and good about network design, about like productivity, about logistics, about process and operations, about financials, and like how they all are tied together. That always amazes me the more I delve in. Like it's such a broad topic. I just know buildings and I know markets, and then like I do end up then knowing like labor and logistics as a result. But like it's four walls, and they're tall walls, they're short walls, they're new walls, they're old walls. We painted them, we haven't. We got docks, and it's of course more sophisticated than that. But like such a wide variety of operations that you might work with, and to like be knowledgeable about each one is yeah, I always find that amazing.
But I think it's amazing what you guys are doing, and what I think we like to do as well. If you think about operations as a system, every component on that system has a specific function that feeds each other, right? So the more we learn about that, it's just as you described, just like the body and the physician, right?
Yep.
Before you become specialized in certain things, it is good to have a good understanding of the whole system.
Yep.
So then you can start to better trace and connect each thing.
Yeah.
Of course, buildings play a big role, for example, a big role, for example, when you think about productivity, when you think about flexibility in the operation, and that is on top of mind of the CEOs, the COOs, the heads of logistics, heads of supply chain, right? So I think the more you can bring these elements to the discussion, that's, I think, where you start seeing the value of the partnerships.
Yeah. And then you bring in private equity, and you think that has its own pressure or its own like requirements or its own opinion. I'm curious when you think of some of your work and experience, like whether a firm is public, private, owned by private equity. I imagine you've worked with each one, perhaps. How does that change things a little bit?
It changes a lot, especially when you think about the results. For us in the way that we normally operate, I think it is actually good. It is interesting because every time that we come in, we come with the ambition to generate results at a fast pace, right? I think what normally changes from a private equity perspective to a public trade company or a family owned company is the speed and level of intensity that is behind that ambition. And that's, for me, I think what needs to be balanced, and we need to be able to balance that as well. Because depending on the speed that you're trying to push to some results, that can push you towards some decisions that can jeopardize the mid to long term of
Sure.
that operation. So I think that, and that's something that we try to be very cautious about, and even push back on that, because that is, I think, part of our role. But I
Yep.
think that is the main difference. But other than that, I would actually incentivize, I think the private equity mindset on the results, on the cash flow generation, the improvement, be the margin improvement. I think that is actually a very, having that focus. I think it is good. I think the point is how fast and what you do with that,
Faster.
right? Yeah, right. But also, what do you do with that, right? I mean, okay, because if I am a family-owned company, I think being ambitious on improving your cash flow, improving your EBITDA margin, I think that is great, because then you can do whatever you want with that cash flow, and you can become more competitive, you can become bigger company, whatever you want. You can even distribute more to your own employees, whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's it's a value creation element that at least keeps you in the edge of competitiveness, and whatever you want to do with that competitiveness then becomes your decision. So
Yeah.
I would actually,
I
and
like
that's
that.
what we
Good
try.
answer, Gabriel. Yeah, that's a good one.
And so I would incentivize everyone to do that, because that's the type of mindset that we need to try to bring, is let's focus on the results, on the problems that we need to solve. So that is what I would recommend.
Yeah, regardless of the type of ownership, they all have their own nuance, but a lot of it just comes back to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Because yeah, in the end, I mean, what matter to every business, I need to generate enough profit that I can reinvest in the business or whatever I want to do, so I
Yeah.
can still be competitive and advance my competitiveness, or if I want an exit, whatever. But it's always positive to be more profitable, right? Because then you can decide whatever you want to do with that profit. Again, considering that you are not jeopardizing the mid to long term elements of your operation.
Yeah. Love that. And then if you take the other side of the experience, you must meet people that are operations they live in the warehouse and that's their domain. And they have their own problems trying to help be profitable. They are the ones that press the button or that are looking at the report on the change that you suggested. And it changes how they live their life on that day, on what their hours are when they are there and how they are doing it. So you deal with operations, logistics, supply chain. What are the people on the ground that you usually are interacting with?
So a lot of the fun, that's a fun part
With
of
your
our.
hard hat, maybe your safety
Oh,
goggles,
a
you put
lot.
your vest on and you're out
Oh, a
there.
lot. I cannot count how many hours we spent in the shop floor with the hard hats. I mean, it's funny for us because we normally even start dressing the same garment as the operators, the same as the supervisors,
Get your
as we are,
boots.
because because
Get,
because
yeah,
because we want to be part of that. But I think for me, that is one of the big elements that we try to work on, especially when you think about implementing a strategy, right? Because deciding on a strategy is half the way. But how do I make sure that strategy connects to the person that is in the front line that is actually doing the work, right? So,
yeah,
and that's type of thing that we try to do. So in our day to day, we interact all the way from the directors of operations, heads of supply chain, directors of logistics, warehouse managers, frontline supervisors, and operators. Because, and let's take one simple example, right? Let's say that we decided that we need to improve service on time in full, right? Clear metrics.
that's a good thing to improve. Yeah,
Yeah, right. So as we go through this process of understanding where the flaws are, because before I go in there, maybe let's separate something, right? When we think about how we frame the problem, right? The problem is framed on an output that I want to achieve. In actual, for us in Falconi, how we define a problem is a difference between where I am today and where I would like to be, right? That's it. So if I want to be at 300 warehouse pallets per person, or if I want to be at a 98, 99% on time in full, where I am today, that is my problem. Cool. Let's find a way to solve that. The causes are in your processes, in your structure, in your team capabilities, in your controls, in your flows, how you organize yourself for that. So if you want to change that output, I need to change all those things. So in need to change all this, I need to be interacting with all these people. So I need to be
yeah,
sitting with the inbound manager and rethinking how we're going to do the inbound flow. What type of controls are we going to have on time arrival that maybe they don't control today, then is affecting their productivity because they have idle operators there waiting for a truck to get docked. So maybe we need to start having those controls. We need to have rethinking the positions of people in the docks. We need to rethink the flow of the materials, and we need to train that people so
yeah,
they can actually perform to that. So that's why we interact with everyone, because we help and we support through all these stages of the change So in the end, they can have a new ways of working that gonna deliver them that expected result.
Yeah.
So that's why it's uncommon for us to be in the office, in corporate office, in front of the
I
computer.
found you in the office. Yeah.
Yeah, it is more common for us and for our team to be in the front line, in the shop floor with the teams implementing that. So we interact with everyone, to be honest.
Yeah. It's so, I love the part of like, how can you expect someone to do something on your team if you haven't trained them how to do it? And like, how much of it goes back to like, you may have this expectation or this understanding, but until you have met and you've worked through it and like trained it and drilled it maybe over and over again, like to expect change is people do that even though it seems obvious or like foolish that like you would just say, hey, things need to change, and they magically, snap your fingers and it happens.
Yeah. We as humans hate change. That's a reality, right? We as humans don't like change is uncomfortable. But I don't know who said that, but the definition of insanity is expecting a different outcome doing the
Yeah.
same thing, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think we take for granted that um, when we say something, say, let's do this different, or this needs to be done in a different way, or this needs to be done in a certain way, we assume that everyone that listened to that understood the same thing, which is rarely the case. And
Yeah.
so imagine a decision that's made 3 layers above the shop floor, how that decision gets to the operator, right? How that reflects. So that noise gets propagated. So
Yeah.
working with that alignment across the layers, I think that is one of the most important things to guarantee any strategy success.
Yeah, to really own it, to feel it, and to know like the how your action is gonna like contribute towards the whole goal of what you're trying to attain.
Exactly, that's not news. I think that is something that people have been discussing for a while, but it's hard to do that in reality. It takes time, it takes effort, and it
Yeah.
takes some training, coaching. So it is. I think that is the biggest element.
Surely technology then gets involved and makes
Yeah.
everything different or provides new opportunities. So if we take like automation or any robotics or anything that's like machinery, and of course now AI is the taking over everything. How is that flowing through into your engagements, into what you see people doing, what you like might provide or suggest as new or better ways to do things? Or like how you do your work in general, like how's technology applicable to the here and now and how it's changing?
That's a great point. We
Because we got the people are people, so we deal with what we need to be successful there, and then technology like is not people in the sense of like it does change so much.
Yeah, no, definitely. Uh, we have a perception. I mean, and I think that's not our perception. I think there's a group in society that has a perception that technology will only exacerbate whatever you have in front of you, your whatever signals you have, right? So how we translate that to our reality is if you have chaos in your organization, technology will only exacerbate that chaos and make it even more expensive. So
Yeah.
we try to take a very pragmatic approach to technology, which is an enabler to solve a certain problem or to achieve even higher levels of performance. So I think
Yeah.
whatever discussion about technology that is starting without problems that we want to solve or opportunities that we want to capture becomes very vague, right? Because of course, in the other side, there is a lot of technology vendors trying to push their solution. But if that's not a problem for you, why would you be spending your time and resources to something that is not a problem and a priority for you right now?
It's cool. It's new. It's
Yeah,
shiny. People say good things about it. Yeah.
exactly, right? So I think there is this first thing that we all normally try to do is to let's bring these discussions to technology. Let's ground this. Let's put this on a layer of reality, right? So I think that is the first thing that we try to do with our clients. I'm not saying that the potentials are there. I think the potential is huge, and there are great companies doing amazing things with that. But to the majority of the organizations, they are not even ready to start talking about AI, because if you don't have, for example, a great foundation of data and integration, your applicability for AI gets very limited. Your applicability for drive great improvements is very limited. So the way that we are approaching this with our client is
You're taking all the fun out of it, Gabriel, right? But that's the
probably am.
reality of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I probably am. Yeah, I probably am. Yeah, I've spoken with some people. They showed up super excited with some technology, and then when I asked him, okay, what problem you're trying to solve with this, and he said, "Wow, this type of problem." I say, "How much that cost you?" And he said, "Well, maybe 1-2 hours a week." And how much this solution will cost you? And it's going to say, probably 4 times this. So where is your return on your investment for this? And sometimes they don't even know how to answer that because they
Yeah.
haven't go through, right? So I think the excitement is good, but we cannot mix excitement with practicality, right? What is practical right now that I need to be focusing on? And there's a lot of things that are not, but what we are seeing, especially in operations, there are some very specific use cases that are super real that we strongly incentivize companies to go for. Like, for example, if you think about materials handling, especially with basic operations, to feed the production line with material, to move pallets out of the production line within the warehouse. I think those use cases are super solid right now. Of course, we need a lot of infrastructure to drive that, but those are solid. Think about maintenance and predictability of failure. I think
That's a
that
good
is
one.
also a big one, especially for rotating equipment. I think that is also super a clear use case, very high returns on investment. Some basic of process control with AI, especially if you have some isolated processes. And especially in manufacturing, if you think, for example, how you adjust your parameters of your machine so you can drive the best output of your machine. I think that is an interesting one, that if you have already all the variables flowing through at a real good accuracy, good frequency of data points, I think that's also a very clear use case. And machine vision, I think, is also a super one. If you think about inventory counting, inventory control, quality inspection, not only in the production lines, but also in the warehouse, I think those
Yeah.
are super solid one. Pick and placing technologies, there are some use cases that are useful, others they're not. You're not going to see the ROI there. One
Yep.
interesting thing that we saw companies doing is they started to reduce their expected internal rate of returns for
Okay.
automations,
Yep.
for certain automation, because the benefit wasn't the savings, the benefit became the resilience because of the
Okay.
instability of the labor force, right? Because
Okay.
suddenly you cannot operate because you are missing 15-10% of your operators in that day. But if you have the machine, that's not going to happen, right? So that also became an interesting thing around digital and automation and technology. But yeah, that is the path that I see. I think there are some very interesting elements when you think about the AI related to knowledge management
Yeah.
and training, that especially now, again, with the labor market, the competition for good people, I think that is a big one. And that's where we have been investing the most internally in our
Okay.
processes, is how we make sure our consultants have the best information available in their hands
Yep.
to accelerate some of their insights, and also some automation of some repetitive tasks. But the the biggest benefit is not in the productivity, it is in the quality of the output. So that is what we are seeing right now.
Yeah. Quality of the output versus productivity. If you wouldn't mind just explain it a little better so that it's easier to understand. I get productivity, we're saving time, because it's doing something where we don't have to spend the time doing that. Perhaps the quality of the output might be that its calculations are manipulated without human error, or that you're able to connect more flows of information or data without it being mixed up or done improperly, or help me understand that a little better.
Yeah, so if you think about the quality of the output, especially for us, it's about the level of insights that we can generate in the same amount of time, right? So
Yep.
instead of connecting two, three variables, two, three aspects, and getting to a conclusion, getting to the development of a specific action, we can now incorporate other elements that help us to strengthen that decision, and
Yep.
even use that to show people and convince people why that is the best path to take for. So that is what I mean when I think about quality of output. And let's go to an example, right? So instead of looking only, for example, when I think about defining where or why we are losing our on time in full services, instead of only going through which type of products, which type of regions, which type of suppliers or trucks we are using, and that might be affecting this, we
Yep.
also start to incorporate characteristics of the SKU. We start to incorporate flow of material, on time arrival, or even, for example, days of the week, traffic, weather. We can start to incorporate all those variables to get
Yep.
to a conclusion that would sometimes take more time and more iterations to happen, but
Yep.
now we are getting there much faster.
More depth,
Yep,
perhaps.
more
And
depth.
then to
Yeah.
know how much it's correlated is so good. We have 4 minutes, Gabriel, on the clock. Deliver us on time. You must have some real estate implications of some of the work that you've done. Me being a real estate guy, I would be curious to learn, perhaps as a last question for you, just some of the ways you have seen the companies you've worked with then make a real estate decision that they need more space, less space, closing down, consolidating, optimizing their network. What would be some examples you've seen where some of your work has led to, or just this is how it connects from operations to a real estate outcome?
Sure, that's great. I think what I'm seeing, especially if you think about the real estate, and it connects really well with the more tactical and strategic discussions, because when you think about the more operational, once you are in that location, you need to take the most out of that.
Yep.
But I think what we are seeing is that the infrastructure, not only the location, but the infrastructure in itself is becoming more and more relevant in the decision process. Not only when you think about the height of the location, the number of docks, the floor, the lighting, right? Because all that
Power.
are how you enable flow of material, flow of people, flow of products. All that is becoming more and more relevant. But also started to see things around, okay, what about the outside space? Parking for employees, because if I don't have good parking for employees, how I'm gonna supposed to retain my team and getting the people coming to work, and even facilities around the location that people can actually feel good about going to work, right? So
Yep.
that is one example. We were having a discussion with one warehouse in California, and they were exactly talking, listen, my parking, we don't have a fence around that protects my employees' cars, and they have been jacked a couple of times.
Yep.
Now I have people that are not coming to work because they are concerned about that. So those
Yep.
elements of, I think it start to become more relevant, and especially when you think about automation, the stability and capacity to provide good energy became
Yep.
super relevant in the decision of the location in itself. But when you think about the whole network design, normally that's a decision that starts a couple of years, should start a couple of years before you see the problem. Right? So it needs to be based on a mid to long term forecast, because it's not easy to do.
Yep.
And especially now when you look at the trends around where products are going, which products are going to grow, which products are not going to grow, you need to start looking at, okay, what is your real occupancy of your space? Because
Yep.
if you walk around the warehouse, you're going to think that it is 85, 90% utilization. But actually, when you start looking in between the racks, there is a big difference between your palette that is in that space and the configuration of that
Sure.
location, right? So
Yeah.
I think companies are being more cautious on before I change locations or move, how can I optimize my space
Yeah.
or by utilization of the space where I am today. And we need to bring to that flexibility around the racking structure. We need to bring flexibility around the docks. So, because I think becomes a super relevant discussion. There's a huge cost when you think about shifting your network. So the upside needs to be super high. And everything that goes wrong here can kill your whole business case. Because if something goes wrong, you might not see nothing of the results that we're expecting. So
Yes.
I think that there is an increased expectation on how the locations can be flexible and sustain these future demands. And I would even say work with the tenant to how can we optimize and maximize what you get from this space, from this location.
Yes. Yep.
But there is also an increased analytical approach that companies are take as before they make those decisions on changing their network, because the risks associated with that are super high, and the benefits might not be enough to justify the investment. So that is what we are seeing right
And it's more irreversible, I
now.
suppose.
Yes,
When you take risk and reversibility, you can't really back out of that. It's a new sunk cost or sunk effort or sunk labor or sunk, whatever you had to wager in order to see if you have real returns from that initiative.
exactly, exactly. It's not a simple process change that you're making that you can unchange that in a couple of weeks, right? If
Yeah.
you're moving locations, it's gonna be years are gonna be tied to that. I
Yep.
think that collaboration and relationship, I think that is super important. And companies are being able to use that or to factor that more into their models as they are going through those network analysis to decide.
Yes.
We have much more data available. We have much more um, analytical capabilities today to help decide. But I also think that there is an aspect of relationship and willingness to collaborate that I think helps everyone that has a current tenant on how I help you become even more productive and we increase our partnership.
That's perhaps the most important part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would even say, especially if these medium to smaller companies, there are several capabilities that a large company has that maybe some of those small companies they don't, and that eventually retail, industrial, real estate companies could add as an additional services to those companies at a scale because you have multiple companies that could benefit from. So I think that is a way to help and collaborate and turn into something feasible, a capability that a smaller company might not have.
Hmm. I think like facilities management is one thing that comes to mind, but I'm sure we could brainstorm all sorts of ones.
Yeah, if you think about infrastructure, data integration, if you think about even some services around layout analysis to optimize,
Yep.
right? If you think about energy optimization, energy consumption optimization, those are certain services that get smaller companies, depending on the moment they are, let's say
Yeah.
small growing company, they are not even looking at that. They're just
Yeah.
concerned on shipping, and get products out there. So being able to take that expert look, I think can be some value added.
Yeah. I love it. We're going to just keep going.
Yeah, that's it.
I appreciate you, Gabriel. That was good to spend time with you. That was just the start. So I feel like you really brought a lot of great insights to things, and I appreciate you opening things up to examples and like zooming in and out and like bringing it back to like you could see you like reflect on like projects that you had worked on and like really bring the good stuff to the conversation. So I appreciate your contribution. We'll link to your stuff and then make it easy for people to find you that are listening that may have this kind of need. And then I'll catch up with you offline and perhaps we can brainstorm some ways to keep collaborating.
I would love to. Thank you very much, Justin. Appreciate it.
All righty. Take care. We'll see you later.
Thank you. You too.
Yep. Bye bye.